My wife's betrayal and the revenge she never saw coming. My wife cheated on me and on our daughter. Instead of remorse or an explanation, she demanded that I accept it. She wanted me to embrace her new life and just live with it. But I had my own plans. I only wanted to understand why. Instead, she told me to move on, as if her betrayal was something trivial. What she didn't know was that I had already decided what to do next. And when revenge finally arrived, it wasn't the way she expected. Ever had that eerie feeling that something is off? The kind that sends a shiver down your spine, making your heart pound? That's exactly what I felt that night. My name is Albert Brown. I'm 46 years old, 180 centimeters tall, and weigh around 80 kilograms. I work as an account manager for a large manufacturing company. My wife, Elizabeth, though she prefers Liz, is also 46. She's 1.67 meters tall, weighs about 60 kilograms, and still has a figure that turns heads. Tonight, she looked exceptionally stunning in the dress she chose. Liz is a graphic designer for a well-known advertising agency in Fort Worth. We've been married for 25 years. Our history goes way back. We grew up on the same street, best friends since 4th grade. By high school, we were dating, and on prom night, we took our relationship to the next level. We both attended the University of Texas, and for 2 out of 3 years we studied there. We shared a small one-bedroom apartment. In a way, we were already living as husband and wife back then. We have a daughter, Maria, who is 21 and currently studying at the University of Oklahoma. Yes, she left the state for college. We still joke about it. Recently, Maria got engaged to William Thompson, a respectable young man from Oklahoma City. William comes from an affluent family, deeply rooted in the oil industry. His father holds an important position at a major oil company. At 26, William is a little older than Maria, but his maturity is evident. He's completely devoted to her, and we couldn't be happier about their relationship. He's studying corporate law, while Maria is still undecided on a major, spending more time on cheerleading and, well, spending my money. Financially, we're in a good place. Liz earns around $60,000 annually, while I bring in over $500,000 a year as an account manager. About 15 years ago, we purchased a foreclosed house on Lake Arlington for $350,000. After renovations, its value has skyrocketed to around $2.3 million. But tonight, all of that seemed insignificant. Something gnawed at me, a deep unease I couldn't shake. 3 days ago, Liz casually mentioned an upcoming company party. She gave me all the details, then added with a light-hearted tone, "Albert, I know you don't enjoy these events. You'll probably be tired, so don't feel like you have to come. But I was actually looking forward to it." "No, Liz, I'm off the next few days. I'd love to go." Yet, in the days that followed, she kept trying to talk me out of it. Every time I reassured her that I was excited to meet her colleagues, she insisted there was no need. She was persistent, but so was I. On the night of the party, Liz looked breathtaking in a sleek black dress that hugged her curves perfectly. Her blonde hair shimmered under the venue's lights, and her blue eyes gleamed with a glow I couldn't quite place. The moment we stepped into the room, I noticed a man, probably in his 50s, walking straight toward her. In a swift motion, Liz discreetly extended her hand in a silent signal to stop him before quickly turning to me with a bright smile, pressing a kiss to my cheek. That was the first time I felt a tight knot form in my stomach. Something was wrong. We had a few drinks together, but I remained sober. I was a designated driver, but more importantly, I needed to stay sharp. In 25 years of marriage, I had never once questioned Liz's loyalty. But tonight, my instincts screamed at me. And as we sat at a table later that evening, I realized this night was going to change everything. As I sat at the table, I overheard someone mention his name. Chad Smith. The uneasy feeling in my gut tightened. Chad Smith, as it turned out, was one of the top advertising sales reps at Liz's company. The moment I put a name to the face, my instincts went on high alert. Something wasn't right. I had already noticed Liz stealing glances in his direction while we danced. Every time my eyes followed hers, I caught Chad already looking back. Their silent exchanges weren't just coincidences. After one of our dances, as we took a break at the table, Chad finally made his move. Without so much as a glance in my direction, he strode up to Liz and boldly asked her to dance. The sheer nerve of this guy. Not only did he ignore me entirely, but he didn't even have the decency to ask if I minded. His arrogance was infuriating, and I felt the heat rise to my face as my hands curled into fists beneath the table. Liz must have sensed how close I was to losing my temper, because she flashed Chad a sweet smile and politely declined. All my dances are reserved for my husband. For a brief second, I saw something flicker in Chad's eyes, anger or maybe frustration, before he turned away and found another woman to take to the dance floor. Not long after, Liz asked for another drink. I got up and made my way to the bar, trying to shake the unease creeping up my spine. But when I returned, I froze in place. Chad was standing in front of Liz, talking to her. The expression on her face made my stomach twist. Her eyes, sad, almost pleading, locked onto his. I stepped back, blending into the crowd, watching from a distance. I didn't want to confront them just yet. Instead, I observed. Then I saw her lips move. "I'm sorry, dear. I've always been good at reading lips. It's a skill I've refined over the years." There was no mistaking what she said. "I'm sorry, dear." A chill ran down my spine. For the rest of the night, I didn't touch another drink. My senses were sharp, my mind alert. And once I started paying attention, I noticed something else. The way people glanced at us, at me, at Liz, and at Chad. The atmosphere was heavy, like I was the last one to figure out a well-kept secret. By the time we finally left, my thoughts were racing. I've never been one to bottle things up, and tonight wasn't going to be an exception. The moment I shut the car door, I asked, "Liz, what's going on between you and Chad?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but I knew she could hear the tension underneath, the suspicion, the pain. Who the hell is Chad to you? Because from what I saw tonight, there's something between you two. Are you cheating on me? I kept my eyes on the road, gripping the steering wheel, but the silence was suffocating. Liz let out a sigh before responding. "Chad is just a colleague. I can't believe you'd even think that. Albert, I love you more than anything." Her words were firm, but something about her tone felt off, too controlled, too rehearsed, like she was trying a little too hard to sound convincing. I didn't push any further that night. Instead, I let the silence settle between us. Liz knows me well enough to understand that if she ever betrayed me, there would be consequences. She's seen what I'm capable of firsthand. Back in high school, when a bully wouldn't leave me alone, I waited. I bided my time. Then at the end of the day, I cornered him and beat him so badly he lost control of himself. Liz was there, swearing to the teachers that I couldn't have done it, because I'd been with her the entire time. So, if Liz is playing games with me, she should know one thing. A storm is coming. Deep down, I already knew it was only a matter of time before the truth unraveled. I couldn't forget the way she looked at Chad, the way she spoke to him. "I'm sorry, dear." She had said it so softly, but to me, those words echoed with emptiness. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe there was nothing to worry about, but something in my gut told me otherwise. For now, I kept my doubts buried, but I had already started planning my next move. I refused to stay in the dark any longer. Liz knew exactly what I was capable of when wronged, and if Chad Smith thought he could worm his way into my marriage without consequences, he was sorely mistaken. Liz had over $125,000 saved in her retirement fund. I had more than $1 million in mine. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was the truth, the sleepless nights, the lingering doubts. I couldn't live with them anymore, so I took action. I hired a private investigator, someone discreet, efficient, and thorough. He delivered exactly what I needed: indisputable proof, photographs, videos, even audio recordings. Every betrayal captured in stunning clarity. A few weeks later, Liz and I sat at our usual spot in the dining room, having breakfast like any other morning. She sipped her coffee, oblivious to the storm about to hit. It was time. I kept my voice steady as I spoke. "Liz, you'd never cheat on me, would you?" You've always been faithful, right? Her eyes snapped up, surprise flickering across her face. Of course not, dear. Why would you even ask that? I didn't reply. Instead, I reached into my briefcase, pulled out a thick envelope, and began laying the contents on the table, one damning image at a time. The first, Liz locked in a passionate kiss with Chad outside a hotel. The second, her stepping into a room with him. The third, his car parked right in front of our house. Then came the real gut punches. There she was, sprawled across Chad in my favorite armchair, the same chair where I unwound after long, exhausting days. And finally, the last photo, Liz and Chad tangled together in our bed. The color drained from her face. Her hands trembled as she picked up on the photos, eyes darting across the image like she could somehow rewrite reality. Albert, this doesn't mean anything, she stammered. I don't love him. It's just pleasure. I leaned in, my voice like steel. It means everything to me, Liz. She was floundering now, scrambling for an excuse, anything to soften the blow. He's not better than you, Albert. Not even, she hesitated, then forced a weak laugh. Not even bigger. It's not about being better. It's just different, that's all. A year. My blood ran hot. My hands clenched into fists. A year. My voice rose, harsher than I intended. You've had a damn boyfriend for over a year? She shook her head quickly, almost offended by the word. That's not what we call it at work, she corrected, as if semantics would save her. I'm his office wife. It's normal, Albert. A lot of people do it. It's just part of the culture. I stared at her, my jaw tightening. Office wife. Culture. As if that somehow justified it. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Her voice was barely a whisper. You're not going to leave me, are you? I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head slowly, but not for the reason she hoped. Of course not, I spat. I'm not leaving. You are. Before she could protest, I dropped the final bombshell. Your bags are already packed. They're in your BMW. I want you gone. Now. Her breath hitched. I didn't give her time to argue. I grabbed her by the arm, firm but controlled, and led her outside. Tears streamed down her face, her body trembling as I steered her toward the car. She looked up at me, pleading, Where am I supposed to go, Albert? I didn't hesitate. I don't care. Go live with your office husband. Her expression twisted into sheer panic. I can't, she choked out. Chad's married. He has 3 kids. I already knew that. The private investigator had given me everything, his wife's name, his children's ages, even their home address. But I wasn't about to let Liz know just how much I had uncovered. Instead, I let her stand there, drowning in the mess she had made, scrambling for a way out. Figure out, Liz, I said, my voice colder than ever. Go back to your motel if that's what you want. Just get the hell out of my house. And stay out of my life. She sobbed harder now, desperation lacing every breath. Albert, please, are you really going to throw away 25 years of marriage? I stared at her, expressionless. No, Liz. My voice was calm. Even, we had 24 years of good marriage. The last year, that was nothing but betrayal. You threw it away. She had no more words, no more excuses, just tears. Without another sound, she climbed into the BMW, still crying, and sped off into the night. I stood in the driveway, watching as Liz's car disappeared down the street. A tight knot formed in my stomach. For a fleeting second, I thought about how empty the house would feel without her. But that moment of sentiment was crushed beneath the weight of my anger. A few hours later, just as I was beginning to regain some sense of calm, the phone rang. Maria. I exhaled sharply, bracing myself, then answered. Hey, Maria, how's the wedding planning coming along? I forced my tone to sound upbeat, despite the turmoil clawing at me from the inside. No matter what was happening, I was genuinely happy for her. I was paying for her dream wedding after all. Though she and William handled most of the details, I wanted to give my only daughter the perfect day. But instead of the usual excited chatter, there was a long, uneasy silence on the other end. Something was wrong. Finally, her voice came through, hesitant and laced with tension. "Dad," she said carefully, "I just talked to Mom. She's crying, saying you kicked her out of the house. What's going on?" A cold weight settled in my chest. The last thing I wanted was to drag Maria into this disaster, but there was no avoiding it now. "Maria, listen to me." I kept my voice measured, though anger simmered beneath the surface. "Your mother's been having an affair for over a year with a man from her office." I expected shock, maybe even sympathy. What I got instead made my blood run cold. Maria let out an annoyed scoff. "Dad, grow up. It's the 21st century. This kind of thing happens all the time. It's not a big deal if a woman wants to have a little fun. Men used to do it constantly." I gritted my teeth, barely containing my rage. "I never have," I shot back. "Not once. And I sure as hell won't stand for it in my own marriage. Tell me, Maria, are you doing the same thing with William?" Her tone turned defensive. "That's none of your business." I let out a humorless laugh. "So, what? This is just how our family operates now." "Aunt Nancy does it," she replied flatly. I felt sick. "So my own family is full of cheaters?" I muttered, the realization making my stomach churn. Maria's voice grew more insistent. "Dad, you need to get over this. Just let Mom come home. Besides, it's not like she's leaving you. And no, by the way, I know Chad. He's great. Mom wants him at the wedding, and so do I." I went rigid. Was this a joke? Had my entire world gone insane? My patience snapped. "If you want Chad at your wedding, he can walk you down the aisle." My voice was ice. "Because if he's there, I sure as hell won't be." Before she could say another word, I slammed the phone down. It rang several times that night, but I ignored it. I was done. 2 days later, Liz showed up at the house. A smug expression on her face, a legal document in her hand. A court order. Apparently, her office husband had deep pockets and access to a top-tier lawyer. The temporary ruling granted her the right to return home until things were legally settled. Unbelievable. She stood there, calm and collected, like this was just another minor inconvenience. "Albert," she started, her tone patronizing, "this hasn't affected our marriage. I've always been affectionate when you wanted me to be. I don't see why I should stop seeing Chad." The sheer arrogance of it left me speechless. She actually believed her betrayal meant nothing, that she could carry on as if everything was fine, that I'd simply tolerate it, let Chad exist in our lives like some twisted open secret. A bitter laugh escaped me. "You seriously think I'm just going to accept this?" My voice was low, dangerous. "You know damn well, Liz, that I will never stay married to a cheater." She blinked, finally realizing I wasn't backing down. "And as for your affection?" I continued, my voice dripping with disgust. "Don't bother. I will never touch you again." I took a step closer, towering over her. "You can have the master bedroom. It's already tainted, anyway. That's where you and Chad betrayed me. I've been sleeping in the guest room ever since I found out what kind of woman I married." For the first time, her composure cracked, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes flashing with something between guilt and indignation. But I didn't care anymore. She wasn't my wife. She was just a stranger who burned our life to the ground. "I'm not some cheap woman," Liz snapped, her voice trembling with defiance. I let out a sharp breath, my patience wearing thin. "Call yourself whatever you want, Liz. It doesn't change the fact that you destroyed our marriage." I took a moment, forcing myself to steady my voice. "I'm filing for divorce this week. This ends now." But Liz wasn't ready to surrender. "Albert, I don't want a divorce," she said, her tone shifting into something colder. "And you should know, Chad and I have already spoken to his lawyer. If you go through with this, I'll get the house and half of everything we own. You make more than I do, which means I'll be entitled to a generous share of your income and alimony." Then came the smirk. "So, my dear husband, you might as well accept it." Rage exploded inside me. To hell with you and Chad. I shouted, shoving past her and slamming the door to my room. That night, close to midnight, a soft knock interrupted the silence. I opened the door to find Liz standing there, her face streaked with tears. "Albert, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I want us to fix this." For a brief moment, something inside me almost wavered. Then she spoke again. "But I also want Chad." Her words landed like a slap, leaving me too stunned to react. I wasn't sure whether to laugh at the absurdity or be sick from betrayal. The next morning, I met with one of our company's lawyers. His expression was grim. "Albert," he said with a heavy sigh, "this isn't going to be easy. If you go through with a divorce, Liz will likely get the house, half your assets, and a significant chunk of your income and alimony. Since Maria is already out of the house, child support is an issue, but you're still looking at around $125,000 a year in payments." I clenched my jaw, barely holding back my frustration. Liz's threats weren't empty. She had the law on her side. The days that followed were tense. We barely spoke, existing in the same house like strangers. But on the third day, Liz broke the silence. "So, are you still foolish enough to go through with this divorce?" she asked, her voice dripping with mockery. I gave her a cold glance. "My lawyer is still reviewing everything." Her lips curled into a sneer. "To hell with you, Albert. I'll take everything you have." I didn't even bother responding. I simply took a slow sip of my drink, ignoring her completely. An hour later, Liz stood in the dining room, speaking on the phone. I barely paid attention until she walked over and held the phone out to me, a triumphant glint in her eyes. "Someone wants to talk to you, Albert," she said, her tone smug. I grabbed the phone. "Hello?" The voice on the other end sent my blood boiling. "Albert, it's Chad." The audacity of this man. "Listen, man," he continued, his tone full of arrogance. "I get that you're upset, but you need to move on. Accept it. Otherwise, we'll take everything you have and make your life a living hell. You have no idea who you're dealing with." A slow, humorless laugh escaped me. "You can have her," I growled. "She's your problem now." And with that, I slammed the phone down. Liz stared at me, waiting for some kind of reaction, but all I felt was disgust. Did she and Chad truly believe they were untouchable? Had they already forgotten how I caught them? With undeniable proof from a private investigator? Photos, videos, recorded conversations. And speaking of recordings, if they were so clever, wouldn't they have realized that every call made in this house, every word spoken under this roof, was still being recorded? Clearly, they weren't as smart as they thought. The following week, Liz met with her office husband 4 times. Always at a hotel. Never in our home. She knew better. I had made it clear. If she ever brought him into my house again, I wouldn't hold back. I think she finally understood I wasn't bluffing. Meanwhile, changes were happening at work. Our company had been acquired by a larger firm based in Colorado, and we were now managing both their products and ours at the plant. One of the new account managers, Alex, was a sharp guy from Colorado, also our plant's new manager. I liked him immediately. He was smart, driven, and as it turned out, he'd been through a nasty divorce himself. He understood exactly what I was up against. The company was restructuring, aiming to consolidate leadership under a single manager. The writing was on the wall. They wanted young Alex to take over. Since he was from the acquiring firm, they were trying to push me out with a buyout offer. Thankfully, being part of a union provided some leverage. Their latest proposal? $700,000, plus converting my retirement into company stock. That night, Alex and I decided to hit a strip club near the plant. Ever since his divorce, he had become a regular there. Said it helped him kill time and forget about the mess his ex had left him in. Between drinks and conversations, something clicked. "Albert, I know exactly what you're dealing with," Alex muttered, swirling his whiskey. "My ex took everything. If I could do it over again, I would have sold everything or disappeared before she could get her hands on it." I nodded, absorbing his words. "Alex, you might be the smartest guy I know." I finished my drink, shook his hand, and headed home. She eventually filed for divorce, citing abandonment, hoping to qualify for government assistance. But since I had disappeared, the court was unable to locate me in time. In the end, she was forced into a no-fault divorce just to access benefits. And Maria? She never made it down the aisle. William confronted her about the audio recordings. She tried brushing them off, calling them harmless conversations and casual arrangements. He didn't buy it. He called off the wedding, cutting ties with Maria completely. Suddenly, her entire world crumbled. With William out of the picture, she lost the support of his wealthy family. And as for me, her own father, she lost me too. Now, Maria and Liz share a small, 2-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town. From what I've heard, they aren't exactly living respectable lives. Men come and go from their apartment, each leaving behind a $20 bill. Call it what you will. As for me, life is perfect. I'm soaking up the sun in South Florida, enjoying the beaches, the nightlife, and a fantastic job at one of the big 5 companies. I couldn't have planned it better. Enjoyed the story? Leave a like. It helps the channel more than you know. If you haven't yet, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. And hey, there are 2 more stories on the screen right now. Pick one and keep watching. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next one.